basically, bosses are, well, how do I put this? The bosses are cheap, or slightly cheap, but they're not as bad as the previous game. However, they definitely can't match up to the 2004 game. The bosses don't have as much variety as that game. Some bosses do have variety from others, but a lot of them are similar. They fall to a weakness that befalls a lot of enemies. So I'll get back to this in a minute. Basically, the one problem with the enemies is that you have some of them run away too much. It's like you're just getting close, and then suddenly they turn into vehicle mode and run away. Basically, don't ever count on melee attacking any small vehicles. You're gonna have to shoot them, which is kind of annoying because you know how I said I don't want to be forced to melee attack something. Well, I don't want to be forced to not. I don't want them to cheaply run away from me when I want to. I want to be able to do both whenever the hell I want to. So basically, yeah. But the bigger enemies don't run away, which is good. So either melee attacks or shooting works. However, generally you're gonna shoot because of the way the enemies work. Most of them will back up and shoot, but only the smallest enemies will be stupid enough to retreat. And some of the bosses, which is probably the most annoying thing about the bosses, is they like to friggin' retreat sometimes. Like especially Star screaming Blackout. In fact, I mean Grindor. Anyone that can fly will retreat way too much. It's just really annoying. And then then Megatron is like a no retreat. It's a no retreat guy. But that makes him get defeated fast because everyone else retreats. Although he's probably one of the more challenging bosses to beat, I'm gonna bet. Although I wouldn't know that for sure. Even Optimus Prime runs away, although to his credit, not as much as other characters. Optimus has a smarter sense of running away and not. Actually, Optimus has a smarter sense of when to retreat and when to stay and fight. More so than Megatron, who just stays and fight, never does retreat. I think. Now Devastator, he's pretty fun, but cheap thing, instant kill. There's a point where you get instantly killed. I can understand the vacuum instantly killing you, but if you ever touch his arm, you instantly die. Bullcrap. Also, don't believe what the trailers show for Devastator. It's deceit. Just like Deep 6. Deep 6 is the worst level in the game, yet it looks great. It looks great in the trailers. Don't be fooled. I'll explain why Deep 6 is bad later. What do you think? So yeah, back on Devastator. If they remove the whole hit system from him, then then I pretty much say he's a pretty fun boss. Definitely, but not as good as Tidal Wave. Tidal Wave still pwns him. The Fallen, however, and ironic that that its development team developed both these games, has the same problem as the Emperor boss right from Star Wars: The Force Unleashed on the Xbox 360. He's got some powerful attacks, but then then half the time he'll retreat and call on his minions to do his dirty work for him. You can't attack him. That's bull. I mean, a lot of the bosses do have enemy grunts aid them, but you still can attack them anytime you want. But the Fallen retreats on cycles. That's what ruined the Emperor boss. We do not want to be forced to fight enemies in the final boss. Generally, we just want it to be a one-on-one fight between me and the big man. We want to take the big man down with nothing standing in our way. Also, probably wondering, so the Fallen is the final boss with the Autobots. Yes, but it's also the final boss with the Decepticons, which makes no sense. Instead of letting you play as the Fallen, they take a cheap ass route and decide to make it seem to have the Fallen betray Megatron and say that he's been deceiving him and all this shit. Which of course leads to a plot hole because Optimus spontaneously shows up, even though in the Decepticon story he actually dies, even though he only dies in the Decepticon story. So yeah, there's a lot of confusing stuff. But the bosses are alright, and so yeah, the gameplay is pretty good. The gameplay's alright. It's the campaign, but it could be better. Now, after you've mastered some stuff in the campaign and you're used to the controls, it would be a good idea to try multiplayer, because which is online. There's online multiplayer, there's online ranked match. Basically, just if you play Halo 3 and you played online in Halo 3, just imagine that. Just imagine Halo 3 plus Transformers. Awesome! Because yes, it is. Yes, online multiplayer is the most fun thing about this game. It's very fun. It's very challenging. And there's a variety of games, varying from the basic deathmatch where every bot for himself, Team Deathmatch, Autobots versus Decepticons. And then there's things like Battle for the Shards, which is basically where you capture shards and bring them back to your base. And there's control points where you gotta lock down certain areas with a specific order. And then there's also a unique one called One Shall Stand, which basically promotes teamwork. It does promote some good teamwork because basically you can't choose. In this one, you cannot choose to play as either Optimus Prime or Megatron, depending on who you are. Okay? However, randomly one person will be chosen as Optimus Prime or Megatron. As the mission goes, you will continuously respawn. Every other player other than the leader will permanently respawn, as long as the leader remains alive. But if the leader dies, then you won't respawn. And if the leader dies, you have 60 seconds to clear out to defeat the enemy team before you automatically lose. Basically, it's imperative to protect your leader and take out the enemy leader. And the person who takes out the enemy leader is leader next round. And yes, the leader can take out the enemy leader. And that's even an achievement. So yeah, these are all really fun games, and they don't get old. But the only problem with the online that I have is that it's hard to find a good number of people, and a lot of them quit out, which is problems with Halo. But they're more significant here than they are in Halo. Well, no, quitting I don't think is as significant. I might be wrong, and actually quitting is equally as significant a problem. But the bigger problem is finding people, because half the time I get into a game and it's got like 2 or 3 people, and a lot of times I wind up either outnumbered or outnumbering the enemy team. And I never get a full 8-player team, which is kind of cheap. However, a really cool thing about online is the fact that you actually have to play as characters you haven't yet played as. In fact, there's going to be a rumor that there's going to be a DLC pack that allows you to play as Sideswipe, which is a good idea because they didn't let you play as, since they didn't put him in the campaign. What jackass was in charge of that? So yeah, basically gameplay all in all is pretty fun. It's got all these cool things. So I'm going to give it a 7.7 out of 10. Okay, the controls in this game are a bit awkward. They're not like most usual controls, but they are easy to get used to once you know them. Basically, you're actually in there's actually 3 different modes to the Transformers. There's the standard robot mode where you mainly attack by hitting the X button and like that, and basically you can jump and maneuver and climb on walls, which is climb on buildings, which is a lot easier in this game than it was in the last one. And then there's the weapons mode, which you activate by holding the left trigger. And this will basically it's kind of like in Metal Gear Solid 4 when you activate aim mode. You're constantly holding your weapon. And basically, if you press the X button, you can dodge left, forward, right, or back. So you can shoot your weapons, and you have a primary and a secondary weapon. And every character has different varieties of weapons. Like Optimus Prime has the dual machine gun, then this precision shot and this precision blast thing that can be charged up. While Ironhide has a burst shot shotgun-like thing, and his pulse blasters, which are very deadly in combat, and I mean very deadly. Then there's the third mode, which is the most interesting but the hardest to get used to. Vehicle mode. Because as opposed to most games where you just press a button to transform, then press a button to transform back, you transform the vehicle by holding down the right trigger. And in this mode, you can press the A button to boost, press the X button to shoot, and then that seems simple enough. However, of course, it's actually very difficult to. And also, you can press the left trigger to slide, and it's very difficult. And it's very difficult to get used to because you're almost going to constantly be in motion. However, that's not a big problem for me because you don't have to stay hidden in this, unlike the previous game. So really, if you want to hold still, you just transform into robot mode. Although that's actually just an advantage in multiplayer because in multiplayer, in vehicle mode, you can actually stay off radar, and which is kind of cool because it represents robots in disguise, and it's pretty cool. You're sneaking away from the enemy. However, the disadvantage is that you can't heal in that mode. Only in multiplayer. You can heal in that mode in campaign. Now, if you really think, yeah. Excellent job. In this mode, there's a really cool ability. You can basically when you transform into robot mode, if you hold the A button, you'll jump into the air really high, and this can This can be useful for to get across
find
non-straight paths really
Jetfire
fast.
said it was on the radar.
Just getting through, and you can do some really crazy groove hopping with it. It's really fun.
While he takes a look inside.